Hey guys, I think it's time to talk about this. For the past couple of years, I have been shifting kind of how I engage with digital tools and online life, and it's been a big process of experimentation and sort of figuring out what works for me, my husband, my kids, and I'd say it's been kind of the hardest part of minimalism. I think it all started for me a couple years ago. I was watching a YouTube video of a mom cleaning her house, and rather than kind of that fast-paced, sped-up video and kind of hype music in the background like you often get with Clean With Me videos, this one was really slow, and she was just sort of allowing all of the ambient noises to come in and that kind of soft trickle of water when she's washing dishes. And it was like watching it kind of filled this part of me that I didn't even know was empty. And I'm not by any means a neo-Luddite. I don't want to completely opt out, at least not at this point in life. This is my favorite thing about the internet, is just the access to learning and the access to experts. Being able to learn about every random thing from biblical scholarship or the history of science or how to optimize your circadian rhythms. Like, this is really interesting and exciting to me, and I think it opens my life up in a lot of really important ways. But I was really struck by how that video of the mom cleaning and just hearing the natural pace of life, how foreign and like strangely exciting it felt to me to hear it. And I got curious, like, why is this having this effect on me? And especially since becoming a mom, I'm 5 years into being a mom, there's so little time for just quietness or reflection. And I started learning about solitude, and I started realizing that digital input is kind of everywhere in my life. There can be music going on, or a YouTube video playing, or a podcast going, or a social media to scroll. There's an endless supply of digital input. And with that, we run this very real risk of complete solitude deprivation. And I realize that that doesn't sound like a thing that should be a problem, like really who cares? But solitude deprivation is a state in which you spend close to zero time alone with your thoughts and free from input from other minds. It's not isolation, like it doesn't necessarily mean I have to go to a remote cabin in order to experience solitude, but it does mean things like taking out the AirPods or turning off the podcast in the background and just making time to listen to our thoughts or listen to the sounds of nature around us or the sounds of water as we're washing the dishes. Oh, yeah, no, he's been fine. He hasn't really barked.
I think it's my energy.
Are you okay with that? And throughout history, we've seen a lot of recognition from different philosophers and authors on the necessity for solitude, both in connection with God, with our own creativity, with appreciating other people, with building self-understanding. It seems to be kind of an essential part of the human experience that we be able to step into that quiet at times. A couple of years ago, I read the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by the author John Mark Comer. He, in it, is studying the behaviors and the lifestyle of Jesus of Nazareth. The author was really looking at his example for how he demonstrated how we should live. So not just what he taught, but how he functioned on a day-to-day basis. So Christians believe that humans are both body and spirit. So it's not just a Gnostic view that humans are all spirit, and it's not just a materialist view that they're all body. So what we do with our bodies, how we live, our daily habits, those things impact us at the level of our spirit. And in the book, Comer references in Luke's gospel in which he wrote, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." I was reading in another biblical commentary that it was understood that in his time on earth as a human being, he needed solitude in order to maintain his relationship with God. The Trinity wasn't broken, but it required more effort. So it definitely got me thinking, like, okay, if he needed solitude, then I probably do too. And I do see that in my daily life. Like, my greatest source of strength is in those quiet moments, through connection, through scripture, through going on a walk and just listening to this time of year, the cicadas buzz in the background, or just sitting on the porch in the morning and listening to all of the birds chirping. Those things really ground me and help me to serve my family faithfully. So then the question really became like, how do I create solitude for myself, and how do I detach from these digital tools that are incredibly addictive and kind of a persistent presence in my life?
Yeah, that's good. Finally got a younger sister. So great.
Okay, so then you put this over, or like one of your tea towels over it.
Yeah. Does it need to be wet?
No, it's fine. It's perfect the way it is right now.
No, I mean like, does that need to be wet?
No, it doesn't.
Two for tea.
Hi, internet.
Get out in front of the camera.
So,
whose is this?
That's mine.
So this book became very helpful for that. It's called Digital Minimalism. It's by the author Cal Newport. Basically, his idea is that how we approach our digital life should be rooted in our deepest values. So in it, he recommends a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value, and then happily miss out on everything else. So this is kind of an aside, but I think that this definition is what we're doing with minimalism in our homes and in our lifestyles. We are carefully selecting and optimizing the possessions in our home, the commitments that we make in our day-to-day lives based on what we care about most deeply, and we are happily missing out on everything else. And I think that some people really struggle with this idea of happily missing out on everything else. But where I come from it is that I kind of think you're missing out either way, because there are always going to be limited time, limited resources, limited energy. And so as a minimalist, I am just acknowledging no matter what, whether I do it consciously or unconsciously, I am saying no to something. And so I want to make sure that the things that I say yes to and the things that I say no to are done with intentionality. Okay, so that's kind of my little aside. But going back to digital minimalism, for me, the key insight was that my digital tools were not actually stealing my time. And I know that that is not the case for everybody. Some people are like, oh no, they're stealing my time. I'm sitting down on the couch and I'm scrolling through things that I don't want to be scrolling through, or I don't feel good after I do it. That wasn't what was happening for me. Mine were stealing my solitude because I had integrated my digital use into my occupied time, right? I was listening to things as I washed the dishes, as I did the laundry, as I drove somewhere, but those were also often my only times for a little bit of quiet and to not have the voice of another person always in my head.
What am I doing?
So add
Water.
25 grams of water. It's gonna go in the fridge.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter.
Oops, I did way too much. 39.
Then add 39 grams of flour.
So in the book, the author recommends doing a digital declutter. The declutter is that you take a 30-day break from all technology that is optional. That's step one. And step two is during that time, you explore and rediscover meaningful activities. And then after that 30 days, step number three is to reintroduce optional technology, but only after evaluating its value and how to maximize it. So an example for me of something that really didn't make the cut is Instagram. My experience of it, I know other people love it, but my experience of it is that I scroll through and I just feel like I'm seeing ad after ad after ad, and not even sponsored ads that somebody paid for to have on there, but every single post from social media creators feels like an ad to me. And then there's occasionally a funny meme, and I'm a little sad to let go of those, but it's okay. A couple times a year I visit my sister and she shows me all the best ones and we have a good laugh. But then an app that absolutely made sense for me and I think really optimizes my life in many ways is to have the Bible app. I was able to go through multiple translations and test them out and see what really worked best for me without having to go out and buy multiple translations of the Bible. There's reading plans on there. There's a read aloud function, which is what I like to use because I'm doing the Bible recap reading plan. So I will actually have the chapters for that day read aloud to me, and I'll still look at my phone and read along with it. But that element of having it read aloud to me and reading along with it really improved my retention and my comprehension. So that was something that really supported my values rather than undermining them. But going back to the digital declutter, my experience is that it worked really well for that month and I was firm in keeping in line with it for that month. But once I started to reintroduce things, I slipped into a lot of my old habits, particularly with some of the platforms that I don't want to let go of but I do have a tendency to give up my solitude too, particularly YouTube and podcasts. And so that is when I entered my opt-out phase. And this was the time where I got rid of my AirPods and then I got a flip phone. And I've talked about the flip phone in the past. While it was challenging, there were definitely aspects to it that were very tedious, and I didn't have GPS, which usually isn't a problem, but every once in a while it is, and I would always get lost. I did like that it gave me freedom from the iPhone and all of the temptations that came with it. But I also didn't like that I was getting lost, and that in many ways I was isolated. Couldn't send messages in the same way, couldn't do FaceTime between grandparents and the grandkids. And after I'd had it for about a year and was kind of just muscling through with the parts that were annoying, but whatever, not a big deal. My kids were playing with it and they broke it. And I asked my husband, like, what do you think I should do? Should I go buy another flip phone? And he said, I would really appreciate it if you went back to the iPhone. So at this point, I'm back with the iPhone, and I'd kind of experienced it all. I'd done the phase of digital overwhelm, I'd done my digital declutter, practicing digital minimalism, I'd gone into the phase of opt-out, and now I was back at trying to practice digital minimalism, which is still hard because frankly, it just requires a lot of discipline. I have managed to strip the phone down and the apps on it to the stuff that is really essentials only. And then for the things that I don't know if they really fall into the category of essentials, like YouTube and podcasts, but there's certainly something I really enjoy and don't want to completely be cut off from, I've put some boundaries in place, or kind of what I call protective rules. Like, I'm using downtime to block access to certain apps during certain times of the day. I'm setting time limits on apps so that I know that I never really exceed that amount of its use. And I really removed anything that has like the rat in the cage trying to get the next food pellet effect. Like, if you know those behavioral psychology studies where they would put rats in a cage and they'd have a little lever they could press to get a food pellet, and they found that the ones who pressed the lever and always got a food pellet versus the ones who pressed a lever and would only intermittently get one, the ones who would always get it pressed it less, and the ones who would only get it occasionally pressed it more. And that's the way a lot of our apps are set up, so that we only get that little hit of dopamine intermittently, intentionally, so that we'll go on and use it more because it triggers something in our brains to do that. So anything that triggers that in my brain, even email, is not allowed on my phone. Occasionally I'm out and I need to look up an email. I can re-download it, look up that email, and then delete the app and move on. But I'm kind of removing that temptation to check and check again. Something I've also been thinking is that often with the digital minimalism, or with minimalism in general, there's so much focus on what we're getting rid of and not with what we're replacing. And that's one of the things I liked about this book and the digital declutter is step 2 is all about what are you replacing it with, right? You're not just getting rid of your digital entertainment and various digital tools that occupy your time, you're replacing it with something that you think is more meaningful. And I think that's something that I forget sometimes, is I have to come up with more than just the rules and the boundaries that I want to respect around digital tools, and I have to replace them with things that really fill me up. And I think it's good to start small. So some things that come to mind are waking up in the morning and rather than grabbing my phone, rolling out of bed and coming out to my front porch, particularly this time of year. It's like spring going into summer, so it's really lovely in the morning and there's dew everywhere, and wrap up in a blanket and just sit on the porch or stand on the grass and just listen to all the little birds chirping or whatever other noises are going on around. It's a little thing, it's maybe 5 minutes of my time, but it's much more grounding and effective at waking me up than checking my emails or seeing what's new in the YouTube feed. And I think it's something that parents have to often find, like these little pockets and ways to experience solitude. Like, it's while you're washing the dishes. Maybe it's just 5-10 minutes, but it's while you're washing the dishes. It's choosing to keep stuff off while driving, or putting on your makeup, or washing your face, or brushing your teeth. It's folding a basket of laundry and just listening to the kids playing rather than switching something on in your AirPod. It's observing your kids play. One of my huge problems with the tendency to put in AirPods when I'm around my kids is that I really can't observe and learn about them and learn about where they're at currently in their development if I am distracted by something else. Another thing that I really liked about this book, like why I was drawn to digital minimalism, this idea that like the maximalist approach to technology is that if the tech has any value, the answer is yes, I'm going to add it to my life. While the minimalist approach is if the tech enhances and can optimize my deepest values, then it's a yes. That is just much more in line with the person that I want to be and the life that I want to live. And I'm not expecting this to be the end. Like any intentional practice, it requires ongoing attention and adjustment. It has to shift as my kids are growing, as technology is evolving, and even as my solitude needs are evolving. So after 2 years of this, my goal isn't to have like a perfect digital minimalism system that I can always stick to now and forever. It's more just to stay attentive to how technology and digital tools serve me and our family in living out our values. Intentionality around our habits can be really hard, but it is so transformative. So if you feel like you need a little habit boost, then check out this video here, and until next time.
Like, what are the steps?
That's what I was expecting.
No, that's true.
That was so weird. I mean, my thing's weird too.